My name is Meir Mendelovich. I'm part of the Azure Active Directory organization. Most of the speakers today are from our organization. And I'm working on the application proxy team, on the access team. It's a bit problematic in Microsoft to say the access team because everyone's thinking about the office application called access. So we are not working on access. Our team is dealing with the problem of how we enable access for remote users when they need access to on-prem resources. So in the past, the world looked like that. Very easy. These days were supposed to be very easy to the IT admin. Everything was good. I was thinner, by the way, and I had hair, but let's ignore that. So we had people working in the office from their desktops and connecting to applications on-prem with their credentials in Active Directory. Very well organized stuff. So the first thing that happened is that all these devices came from outside. So I don't know what's the reason for that, but some people like to use devices with fruits and robots on them. We try to discourage them as much as we can, but it doesn't always work for us. I haven't seen one here. So we want to provide them access. Now, the intuitive approach of many customers was, okay, this is another PC. Let's create a nice VPN here, and we will just create a small bubble here that would connect them to the corpnet. And here we go. These devices become the corpnet. This works pretty okay when the devices were actually computers and where they were tightly managed in the model where you have someone that is getting the device from his IT department, and the IT department is very sure and keep everything tightly managed. But the reality is that this approach doesn't work. It doesn't work for several reasons. One, we now have the BYOD, or device it's not necessary that someone is going to Best Buy and buy a device and come back with it, but it's more about the scenario where you have devices that are loosely managed within the organization. Sometimes you have multiple divisions in all places. Sometimes you really have people going to Best Buy and buy their own devices. Another thing that changed is that some mobile operating systems were not built for this world. So it is possible to build a VPN on them, but the experience is awful. Now, I was sitting in one convention behind a guy that was using his iPad. He opened the Cisco VPN, and then he opened the Citrix to get to an application. So it was so funny to me because I was watching him, and every time he moved like his finger like that, it took like for the application to move. So this is an awful, awful experience. And the last reason why this approach doesn't really work is because organizations are not very good in managing all these data. So I don't know how many organizations are really good in managing VPNs. In 90% of the cases where I've seen, eventually most devices that access through VPN can do anything, and you can go around the limitations. So this approach is not good. And I think there is consensus. Everyone other than maybe Cisco and Juniper agree with that. So here came the reverse proxies. And we in Microsoft had TMG and UEG, but of course there are also all kinds of other reverse proxies in the market. And they provide a very nice solution because you have no dependency on this device. They are very easy to deploy, provide you the service that you need. Now, a few years ago, we made a move within Microsoft, and we changed this UEG and TMG. We end-of-life them, and we started web application proxy that is now part of Windows Server and comes together with the ADFS. So this was also coming from our team. We don't really have time to discuss why we did it, but everyone that tries web application proxy understands that immediately. Try that. The time that it takes, if in the UEG day it took like weeks to deploy, with web application proxy, it takes you days to deploy. We just deploy web application proxy and ADFS. But we still don't think that this is good enough. So another thing happens in this process, which is the appearance of the cloud. So now we have these cloud SaaS applications in the cloud, and we also have directory in the cloud to serve these SaaS applications. This allows us to do something that is much better, much more interesting to do. And this is the Azure AD application proxy. It's a new pattern for remote access. And I would like to compare it to competition, but there is no direct competition here. It's a new pattern. And from the initial results we got, and we are in the market, this is GA for the last 2 months, and we have customers that are using it in trial. We get very good results of that. We are feeling very confident that this pattern would be replicated the same way that this pattern was replicated by many companies. So let's see what's the motivation for having this proxy in the cloud. So when we came to analyze that, we came to the understanding that there are 2 different motivations that are not necessarily related to each other. One motivation is that I want to do remote access as a service. So this is the classical X as a service that you have. With anything that is done on-prem, you take it to the cloud and you have it as a service. You have a lower TCO. You are moving from COGS from CapEx to OpEx. And you get everything that is pre-integrated and easy to deploy. So if in web application proxy, we talked about days to deploy because you need to allocate machines and ADFS installation, and there is a topology there. With the web application proxy, with Azure AD application proxy, we are talking about minutes. And today we don't have time because you have very busy schedule. So I don't do this on stage, but if you look for my name in Tech at Europe, you can see a session where we take a company, a fake company, that doesn't have anything in remote access and move all the way to have something that is full-blown remote access. When I'm saying full-blown remote access, I mean certificates, DNS settings, and all the networking stuff that has to be done. So we always forget about this, because you invest so much time in setting up the machines and configure the storage and all of that, that we always forget about how much time it takes us to issue a certificate. So take my word for that. We don't have time for it right now. Go for Tech Ed Europe and see my session there. If you want to see it, I'm doing there in 12 minutes, including all the explanations. And in the end of these 12 minutes, everyone in the room were able to access my application. It's that easy, and it's available also for you as part of Azure AD Premium trial. So you can go to your Azure AD tenant and just turn this on and play with that. So how we do all this magic, how this is actually working. The basic idea is that here we have our CorpNet, and within the CorpNet we install something very lightweight, something very small, that we call Data Connector. It's a Windows service. That's it. Behind the scene, I will tell you a secret. It is a web application proxy that is packaged differently. But don't tell anyone that we reused our own code. The first thing that the connectors are doing is connecting to the cloud service. So it's like a dial home. But the thing is that this connection is their vital connectivity. Everything happens on this connection. So they automatically update using this connection. So they dial home, and if they found a newer version, they would install it and update themselves. It is also used to troubleshoot and to monitor. And it's also used to get the settings. So these machines, the connectors, are completely stateless. There is no configuration. Other than the installation, there is no UI on the connectors. Basically, what I'm telling customers, is that once you configure them and install them, you can forget the password to these machines. Once they are working, don't touch them. It's okay, we take care of that. Look at it as extension of the cloud service. So now when we establish this connectivity, the only thing we need to publish an application is to know what is the internal address and the external address of the applications. Right now, when you tell us the internal address, when we automatically generate for you the external address. So this is a real example of msappproxy.com or .net. We use both of them. And we generate this thing. And this is where we take care about the DNS settings. And this is where we take care about the certificate. So you get all of this by free. Because we use this domain that we maintain. And we take care of that. So now when you have a user that is accessing this address, we are able to route the traffic all the way through to the application and back. This is how we achieve basic connectivity from the cloud to on-prem. This is the mode we call it pass-through, because we basically just let the traffic go through us. That's the connectivity, but that's not good enough. We want to have more security. We want to have more confidence that only the right people are accessing our applications. And to do this, we are doing this with Azure Active Directory. So that we are not alone in this bubble. We have the entire richness of Azure Active Directory together with us. So whatever you configure your Azure Active Directory tenant, it would be available for you here. So one example I really love to give is MFA, multi-factor authentication. I don't know if you had a session about it today. MFA in Azure Active Directory, it is a flip of a switch, nothing more than that. You go to your user, you click on that, and you press enable. That's it. From that moment onward, the user would be prompted to give a phone number, and there is the SMS thing, and everything is taken care of. For you as an IT admin, the only thing that you have to take care of is turning this on. If you turn this on, it would work for your new cloud applications, but it would also work for these applications. So you have now the same technology used for the new shiny application you have on the cloud, Office 365 and Dropbox and all that stuff. But at the same time, you get it for all your legacy applications. You get it for your SharePoints that are on-prem because you don't want to move them. You have a custom code or something like that. You get it for all kinds of line of business applications that people in your organization were building for years. Because when you look at typical organization, the applications look like a long tail graph. So you have very few applications that are very, very popular, and then you have a very long tail of applications. Thousands sometimes. In MSIT, in Microsoft IT, they estimate that we have 1,300 applications. And of course, typical users are using mainly the top 10. But you cannot have your business up and running without the long tail. Now, we hear a lot of people in the industry that give solutions that are very, very good for these new applications, like cloud applications. You have all the features you want if you want to access Dropbox. But if you want to access the thing that is running your business, that is still on-prem, and in many cases would stay there forever, in some cases only in the near future, you need to go somewhere else. So we in Azure Active Directory believe that we need a single solution for the cloud applications and on-prem. So you get all the richness. The same way that Swaroop was talking before about the power of having both B2E, business to employee, B2B, business to business, and B2C on the same platform, the same power goes here. So you now have all the protection, all the auditing, security monitoring features of Azure Active Directory for your existing on-prem application. And in a second, I would explain to you why you don't need to touch this application, because we enable them without any change in these applications. So one of the bad conceptions that people have on the cloud is that it is less secure than having things on-prem. Whenever you talk to an IT admin, they tell you that they know security the best. And if only they would get the right budget, they would have like the most secure organization ever. And when you ask them how much budget they need, this is where you get in trouble. The budget is usually enormous. And guess what? We in Microsoft, we have this budget. So when you put us in front of your applications, you get an enormous investment that we make in security for your on-prem applications. Let's look at the details, because this is a very high-tension subject. So the first thing is that we terminate all HTTP and HTTPS in the cloud. It doesn't get to your on-prem. We start a new session from the connector. That means that all attacks that are layer 2, layer 3, and part of the things that are layer 7, because we actually terminate the HTTP, are stopped in the cloud. For example, one of the things we're doing on the HTTP level is filtering the verbs. So if someone just creating a new verb, and there are vulnerabilities around that, we would stop it in the cloud. Now think about the heartbleed bug that was a year ago. Some other operating system had a bug, a severe bug in its HTTP stack that allow an attacker to run code within this stack. So most of the IT admins I know ran around and tried to find which applications in their organization are exposed to the heartbleed bug. So in this case, because we are terminating the traffic, none of these malicious attacks would get to your on-prem. And of course, the best protection that you can have on your application is pre-authentication. We know this since the invention of the reverse proxies. Most of the attacks doesn't pass this bar. If you already have your username and password, then usually you have so many entry points to your organization that it doesn't matter where it's coming from. So 99% of the attacks are attacks that are anonymous. In this case, if you turn on pre-authentication, we assure you that none of this traffic would get to the actual applications. We stop it in the cloud. Now think about DDoS. In the majority of the cases, DDoS attacks are layer 3 or in very few there are layer 7. But because the authentication is very, very high bar, it means that none of the DDoS attacks would get to the actual applications. We would stop them in the cloud. Not a single IP packet would arrive to your premises. Now, this is where also you gain from the huge muscle that we built here in Microsoft, because surprise, surprise, think about Office 365. It's one of the biggest SaaS applications in the market, and it has a lot of DDoS attacks. And Azure itself has a lot of DDoS attacks. So we have here a whole complete teams that builds protection against DDoS. It's something that is completely transparent to you, but it works for you when you put us in front of your applications. And in many cases, we would completely filter that. But sometimes we are not perfect either. We are falling. And that's fine. Because even if we are falling, and these are very, very rare cases, even if we are falling, your organization still stays intact. The next thing is about the connectivity. As you note here, all the arrows goes from the connector to the application proxy. Nothing gets inside. The proxy only sends outbound requests. So you don't need to open any port on the DMZ or anything like that. The only requirement for the connector is that it would be able to access the service and to access the applications. That's it. I work with organizations that it took them 6 weeks just to open a single port, and then they found out that they need one more port. So you know what, I see the people nodding, yes. We are all experiencing this every day. This is super difficult to deploy in most cases. This is why we trim the UEG, like what I say, a week and in the case also of web application proxy, to minutes, because we don't need to open anything. That's in most organizations. In some organizations, you need to open additional outbound ports, but that's usually very, very easy to do. If you go to our MSDN documentation, there is a list of the outbound ports that we consume. There is, by the way, also the list of domains that we are using. So if you, by the way, want to block us, that's also possible for you. We don't hide that. We put this, we document that, so customers would have the full control, and they would be able to decide what they want to do. Another problem that we are solving is the problem of patching. Think about Microsoft capabilities in patching Windows. We are doing this all the time. And we are scanning our systems, and we are looking for vulnerabilities. We have a red team here in Redmond that is trying to attack our own system all the time. We have people that are sniffing around all the hackers' phones, and there are many other stuff that we are doing. And when they find something, and no one is perfect, we find things, we issue a security alert. Now, if you are maintaining this server, if you went and installed web application proxy, then you have to install the patch by yourself. And this takes time. This means that you would have a gap of hours, days, or even weeks to install that. On the other hand, because we are running the service here, we are doing this instantly. And we are very good in doing this very, very quickly. Without no one even know that we did that. And we take care about all this patching, restarting, and setting them up and down. And of course, the last thing, but definitely not the least, is about the reporting and auditing. I don't know if you had a special session on that, Keith? No? So we can talk only on reporting and auditing in Azure Active Directory for more than an hour. So instead of me talking, and I guess that you are tired when you're home, go to your Azure Active Directory tenant. If it's open the premium feature, to Azure AD Premium, and look at the list of reports that we are getting. We have there huge capabilities that I don't know any customers that deploy them. For example, because large portion of the world is running Windows, or I would say still running Windows, we have a lot of telemetry from these devices. We know when there is a botnet. We know basically because once we identify for a single machine, we can detect other machines that access this same botnet, the command control center. It's a huge world. There are like hundreds of people here in Microsoft that deal with that. So what we are doing, for example, we are giving you a report that shows you which devices that logged into your Azure Active Directory tenant were coming from these machines. And this is just one of I think we have like 10 reports or even more than that. And this is an area we make lots of investments. So you would see more and more things coming from us in this direction, in this vector. Okay, so one thing about single sign-on from the cloud, and I think I have more time? Yes, I have more time. So how we achieve this single sign-on from the cloud? How we do this magic without changing the backend applications? So our basic message is that if you can rewrite your applications to work with Azure Active Directory natively, this is the best thing to do. Go ahead and do that. And this is what we recommend our customers to do to the head of the applications curve, like to the top 10 or stuff like that. But we talk to many customers, and they're telling them that I have so many applications. Some of them I don't even have control. I don't know what's going on there. I maybe purchased it 5 years ago. It's working. Everyone are happy. We don't want to touch it. So we provide single sign-on also to these kinds of application. And the tricks that we are doing is that because when you access the application proxy, you are coming to us with an AAD token. And the AAD token has your UPN inside, or the user UPN inside. So what we are doing, we are taking this UPN and we bubble it all the way down to the connector, because there is a chain of trust between the connector and the service. So now the connector knows about this UPN. And the connector is using a technique called Kerberos constraint delegation that allows the connector to impersonate as the user. So now the connector is getting to the application, and it looks for the application like it is just another domain join device on your corpnet. So you can have here this footy device. No, that stopped working. So you can have this footy device there that doesn't know anything about domain join, that is accessing something that is on-prem that knows only domain join. The way to configure it, by the way, is to use, you need to go to the Active Directory and provide permissions for the connector to do the impersonation. It is a very simple configuration. We have it on our MSDN with explaining how to go through. It's something very standard. Most of the IT admins, AD admins know how to do that. It's working for many years, so you don't need like the latest AD version. But what that have changed in, I think, Windows Server 2012 is that it's now also working cross-forest. So even if your organization is multi-forest, KCD would still be working. So this is the two blogs that we are using. The first blog is the general AAD blog that I hope that all of you are already familiar with. And if not, this is where we post the big news. But because we don't want to clutter this blog too much, we post more things that are like troubleshooting tips and small features that we make go live. We post them also to a different blog that is called the Application Proxy blog. It's simply the level of interest. So if you want to know the big news, go to AD blog. And if you are really interested and want to know everything that is changing, you already deployed it, and you're looking for a specific feature, let us know. You can go there and look for it. We also have an external email address that you can approach as our team. So if you want to give us feedback, please let us know. And here is an important thing. And I think throughout the day, maybe you've seen it with all the AAD capabilities. We are evolving this service on the go. It is so, I can tell you that from my personal point of view, it's so much more interesting than sitting in a room, making plans for 3 years, develop, and then when you actually get this to customers, it's outdated. So we need your feedback. We have a lot of plans going forward. But without your feedback, we don't know how to tune that. So I really want to hear from you about what you think. And if you have a blocker, please let us know. We are keep evolving this all the time. So if you have a blocker, maybe this is something that is coming in 2 or 3 weeks, let us know. I will share with you a few details about the things that are currently in development and would be available in the service in the coming weeks. So one thing is the ability to have custom domain names, meaning that if you don't want to use our domain name, the domain name that we provide and we take about the certificate and the DNS settings, then we would allow you to have your own domain name, but then you would have to upload your own certificate and, of course, to renew them, and etc. And you would also need to take care about the DNS setting for this domain name. We hear many companies that really want this level of just to have this domain name. Another reason for that is that many applications are not built for reverse proxies. Still, today, 10 years after this became a commodity, some applications are not built for that. Unfortunately, even some that we do here in Redmond. So you usually have ways to configure that. So for example, in SharePoint, if you know there is the AAM setting and all this lovely stuff, you can configure it. It's working. We have SharePoints working with that today. But if you want to do it almost seamlessly, you want to use the same URL internally and externally. So by having your own domain name, that allow you to have a single URL. There are also other applications that actually explicitly tell you that they don't support publishing unless it is done with the same URL, the same domain name. For example, most SAP have very explicit requests for that. So this is something that we are going to do very soon. Another thing that we are doing is to have more control and more visibility to the connectors, to the status, if they're up or down, or where they are installed from the cloud. And let me think about the thing. And another thing that we already shared is the fact that right now it is part of AD Premium, but we are also making this available for AD Basic. This is something that would happen very, very soon. And this is just like the top of the list. There are a couple of smaller features that are coming. Just stay tuned on our blogs and you would have the right visibility for that.